Lance Lambert. Thanks for tuning in to the Vintage Vehicle Show. We are in Kirkland, Washington at the home of Kent Sullivan. He is a guy that is into Corvairs. This guy knows a lot about Corvairs. He owns a lot of Corvairs. He's going to tell you about a lot of Corvairs. So, Kent, come on in here. How you doing?
Good, Lance. How are you?
Good. What a facility. This is fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm very fortunate.
How'd this come about?
Well, I never really dreamed I'd have a space like this ever to work on cars, but things just worked out that way financially. Thank you, Microsoft. So I was raised to always think of other people and be generous, and I thought, hey, you know, I could do something here that wouldn't be just for me, but could be a place where people who love Corvairs in my area could come and work on their cars, and so that's what we did.
You're active in the local Corvair scene here, so you just throw the doors open and they come by here and turn a wrench on them and have a good time?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we have a formal event once a year in November, a tune-up day. We had 28 cars and 45 people last time, I think. But there's always projects going on. You'll see a couple of them today that we're working on.
I would think that a Microsoft guy would be more into Mercedes-Benz or some Ferraris or something like that. How is it you end up being a Corvair guy?
Well, the affliction started early with me. My first car was a Corvair. I grew up in Indiana in a real little town. And I wanted to have a job in high school to make some money. I talked to the one mechanic in town that had a service station. That's where my mom had her car fixed. And his name was Fred. And Fred and I talked about all kinds of different cars. He was a real car nut. And one day he said, well, I've got something here for you. And he had brought in his copy of the Corvair Decade, which is kind of the coffee table Corvair book. And that really, really just caught my interest, I think, because it's so different engineering-wise. And I'm kind of an engineering nerd. And it's just kind of an underdog car, and so that's what I bought. I bought my first Corvair before I even had my license, so I was 15 and a half.
Well, you have a beautiful facility filled with Corvair. Some are yours, some are your fellow club members. Can we take a look at some of your cars?
Absolutely, that would be fun.
All right, let's go inside.
All right.
Corvairs, the simple thing is there are two different body styles. There's subtle changes with all those. This is the second body. We're going to look at the early body, but this 66 and this one is kind of a hot rod, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This is one of my cars. This is a 500 model. I bought it intentionally because it has less chrome, bright trim, because it's kind of purpose in life is to be sort of a street sleeper.
What have you done for performance on this?
Well, most of the performance work has been in the engine area. It was the first kind of a beta test of a hydraulic roller camshaft setup. A friend of mine in California is producing them now, and this was the first engine we did with that. And then it also has a aftermarket VW cylinders and barrels that takes it from 164 cubic inches, which is about 2.7 liters, out to 190 or 3.1 liters. And then I've done some things like the front seats are out of a Chrysler Sebring convertible because I wanted shoulder harnesses, but the way these interiors are constructed, it's really difficult to get in and out of the back seat if you have a shoulder belt strap going down. And with the Sebring convertible seats, the whole belt is in the seat. Then I've done some upgrades, like I put on a dual master cylinder from the next year Corvair that was introduced in '67.
You bring up the safety features on this. Of course, myself being a former Corvair owner, everybody, they either said, cool car, or what is it, or don't you know how dangerous that car is. Ralph Nader, who a lot of Corvair people don't like, I think it's great because what he did makes these cars still affordable.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Ralph.
Yeah, the average Joe can go out and buy a Corvair, and a really nice one, for not a whole lot of money. But what was that all about? What was Nader upset about?
Sure. Well, Nader's famous book that kind of launched his career is called Unsafe at Any Speed. And a lot of folks think that the whole book was about the Corvair, but really it was the first chapter, which of course is the chapter that all the reviewers read, so it became automatically about the Corvair. He was unhappy with the design of the rear suspension in the 60 to 63 model, which is a swing axle design, a pure swing axle. Later on, of course, it got to be such a hullabaloo that the government got involved and there was going to be a trial, and the government did some research down at Texas A&M University, and they actually wrote this very long report which said the early model Corvair is just as safe as any other car of a similar size produced during the same time. And of course the rear suspension is essentially no different than the VW Beetle, which how many bazillion of those were on the road by then? So, you know, it made him successful, so I guess he he ended up doing well regardless of whether that was actually true or not.
Right, and that book means that every Corvair is about $30,000 less
That's right.
or more than it should be. Here we have something that it's got the wheels, it has the paint, this is a really good looking car. What do we have here?
This is Andy Clark's 66 Corvair, and it's kind of a tribute to the Yenko Stinger. They didn't produce Stingers in this color scheme, but Andy's a very handy guy, and he was looking for a project now that he's semi-retired, and so he thought, I'll just build kind of a Yenko clone, and he just finished it.
The Yenko, that was a dealership that took Corvairs, correct, and tweaked them and made hotter little cars out of them.
That's right. Of course, Don Yenko is very famous in the Camaro, Chevelle, and Nova crowd, but his first production car was the Yenko Stinger, which is a Corvair, in 1966. And then a few of them were made in 67 as well.
Somehow Stinger seems perfect for a Corvair.
It's a great name, I think,
Yeah. The alterations on this, obviously, are the paint and the wheels. Is this high performance on this?
Yes, absolutely. He's done a really nice job with the engine. It's based on the 140 4-carb Corvair engine, but a lot of work both internally and externally, and of course he's done a custom interior and a custom paint job. He's added the Yenko sail panels here, which is a really nice touch. Yeah, it's a great car.
Yeah, great looking car.
He scored gold first time out in the Concours at the Corvair show, so we know it's a great car.
You have a 65 here that is mid-build. It looks like it needs an interior and the motor put back in, but for those not familiar with a Corvair motor, this is it. It looks more like a motor out of a Tucker or something. It's very unusual, the build on it. Tell us about that.
Sure. So this is Jackson Weaver's car, and he's been bringing it back. It has sat with one owner or another for about 12 years without running, and Jackson did a great job repainting the car and putting it back together. And the last thing was to get the engine up and running, and we did. We got it out on the road, and then it broke a starter nose, and turns out had a bad flywheel. Corvair flywheels are multi-piece, and they were originally riveted at the factory, and they come apart over time, and they cause the starter noses to go south. So we have the engine out, getting ready to put the new bolted flywheel back in. Jackson's got the really hot engine from Corvairs. This is the 180 horse turbo motor, which is only offered in 2 years, 65 and 66. So this is the engine here. This would point to the rear of the car, of course. This is the turbocharger here and the carburetor, which interesting kind of trivia. You recognize that carburetor maybe? That's out of the Blue Flame 6. It's a Carter. It was on the parts shelf when it came time to put a sideways carburetor, because most carburetors in the GM stock, of course, are downdraft.
So that's a real antique on
it
there.
It is, yeah. We call it the controlled leak. Yeah, it's not a very complex carburetor.
Well, these were notorious for throwing these off, and I know mine had a tension kind of thing on it
right,
to make
that
so it
that.
did.
Yep.
And then the other thing they were famous for were people that did something that they thought was smart and not so smart. They would remove this panel thinking it would make the motor even be cooler because it'd be more open around it. It did just the opposite, right?
That's right, that's right. The Corvair engine compartment is designed as a vacuum chamber, basically, and the fan needs the vacuum to be able to pull the air through and down across the cooling fins on the head. So yeah, any kind of air leaks, any holes, that's very bad news, especially in the summer. And then of course here, because it's a rear engine car, this is the transaxle. It's very compact. And the input shaft, of course, goes all the way through and then back. So we're looking here at the differential, which is where the half axle shafts connect, which are sitting here. And then this is the transmission up here, which is a Corsa 4-speed.
And the manual shifts on a Corvair have a very distinctive feeling. It's sort of like you're plodding through Jell-O a little bit.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Well, you know, the shift linkage is about this long.
Yeah, so you got a little bit of a bend on it.
Yeah.
Very pretty color. Yellow works well on Corvairs. This is a 66.
Yes.
This was a 1 year only color. They had other yellows, but this was just the 1 year.
Right, right. Yeah, I think the same yellow was used across the whole Chevy, if not the whole GM line. It's kind of a butter color this year.
How do you think the color is? I mean, you put red on most anything,
right,
and it works. And certainly works on any Corvair ever made. But they had a lot of great colors. Corvairs were, and some were they just only Corvair colors, or were they also the rest of General Motors?
As far as I know, across all of GM. One difference is in 1966, the Canadian-built cars, which would have been other cars besides Corvairs, had 3 more colors. So there were 15 colors in the US in '66 and 18 in Canada.
We've been talking about the later body style, which started in 65. This is 60 through 64 for this body style, which to me always looks like a bar of ivory soap. But I like it a lot. That's what mine used to be. I had a 62 way back when. 4 doors. They make 4 doors, and that's the little wheelbase here. Tell us about this car.
Sure. So this is owned by Sue Thomas of Linden, Washington. And this is representative of the original idea for what the Corvair was going to be all about. Ed Cole, who eventually became president of General Motors, the whole Corvair project was his baby. And he thought America needed a Volkswagen, basically. And so the first Corvair models designed were the sedans, 4 doors, with a small horsepower engine to be very economical, safe family car. And so when the original Corvair came out in the fall of 1959, it was this kind of car.
Did the people that changed it from this kind of car to a sexy little convertible, did the marketing at General Motors wake up one day and go, wait a minute, these people keep ordering these things in 2 doors and they want this, this, and this on them, let's give them what they want? How quickly did that transition take place?
It was reasonably quickly. That's a good question. The first 2-door Monza Coupe came out in the spring of 1960, and I think it caught Chevrolet by surprise in a positive way, because it turns out it was the first car that you could buy down at the local dealership that had bucket seats and a 4-speed, and they just caught fire. And in fact, the sales kept growing, and I believe that the largest one-year sales for the Corvair through its 10-year run was 1962.
They made the 4-door. They made a station wagon also, which we have right here. Oh, great little cars. They have a surprising amount of room in the station wagon.
They sure do, yeah.
How did that come about?
A station wagon was envisioned from the beginning, I understand. As I mentioned before about Ed Cole, not only was it to be an economy car, but it was to be a full line of vehicles. And so sedans, coupes, then convertibles, and they had station wagons. Then we're going to be looking at some of the trucks and vans here in a little while, I'm sure. So this was part of the whole plan to have a variety of vehicles that people might be interested in. This, of course, would be aimed at families, like most station wagons were.
And this particular one aimed at families, but it's got a little Monza sticker on there, so that means this was the hot little one. It's kind of like taking your Corvette and making a station wagon out of. How did that come about?
It's very true. I think it really had to do with just how successful the Monza had been in the coupe, and then in '62 the convertible. So I think they just decided that bucket seats and a 4-speed were very popular, and hey, let's try it in the station wagon. So that's what this car has. It has bucket seats in the front and a 4-speed on the floor. Very unusual for a station wagon. I like the station wagons because they're taller. It's hard to see, but they're 2 or 3 inches more height there, and they actually had to make all different side glass and everything. And the front seat goes back further, so it's actually a real pleasure to drive for a tall person.
We have nice little economy cars, we have sexy little convertibles, we have utilitarian station wagons. Here we have a van, a Greenbrier, which I might say we are located in the development of Greenbrier, which I understand you had something to do with.
Well, the gentleman is a friend of mine who's building the houses, and he said, what should we name this? And I had a perfect name for him, because there's lots of trees around, and of course the Corvair connection.
We're in Greenbrier. This is a Greenbrier van. Tell us about this.
Sure, so this is a 1961, which is the first year they brought out the trucks and the vans, and this kind of completed Ed's vision about the full line of vehicles.
Ed Cole from Chevrolet.
Cole, exactly. So this is the window van. So this is licensed and considered a passenger vehicle, and so like dealerships that only sold Chevy trucks wouldn't offer this vehicle. But so it is the full passenger van, and it has side doors. And there was a rare option this van doesn't have, but it actually had left side opening doors. So eat your heart out, Chrysler, I guess. We had that in the Corvair in 1961.
The style of them, they're beautiful for vans. It's just a great looking rig.
Yeah, it's great visibility. I mean, you can haul a ton of stuff. It's got a very low load floor if you do want to haul some cargo in it, because the engine's in the back. So it's, very accessible.
This one has a 80 horsepower motor in it with a 2-speed. It says 6-cylinder on his little sign here.
Yep.
That's plenty of oomph for this.
Yeah, they don't move along as fast as the cars. And in fact, in 1964, they did up the displacement and the horsepower in the trucks and vans along with the cars. But they do move down the road pretty nicely once you get them going. It's just, a full load up a hill can be a little bit of a struggle.
My understanding is that they weren't in favor so much with the Corvair community, so they sort of rusted into the ground, and then somebody said, wait a minute, these things are really cool, so these are really in demand now and hard to find.
There's been a real renaissance in the trucks and vans in the last 10 years. That's absolutely right, yeah.
Speaking of trucks, Corvair came out with a truck that had something about it that when it hit the market, I thought, this is the greatest thing since peanut butter. This is going to change for eternity the future of trucks. It didn't happen so much, but I sure thought it was a good idea. Can we go take a look?
Absolutely.
They call these a Rampside for a very specific reason. Show us here.
Oh, you bet.
This just makes so much sense to me, and you have your big refrigerator or whatever and the hand truck. And
I've hauled refrigerators twice in this already. Yep.
Just drag it up here.
Yep.
How come every truck from this point on isn't set up like this?
Well, the Corvair certainly had an advantage because the engine's in the rear. So the or the space between the axles, there was no drive line, and so they could lower the load floor way, way down, and that makes the ramp a really feasible thing to do.
How's this compare as far as cargo area with a standard Chevrolet truck at that time?
That's a really good question. I'm not exactly sure, but a 4x8 sheet of plywood will fit inside. It doesn't sit up, you know, out the sides or out the back, so it's pretty good. And there's a funny story that they, the big Chevy truck guys made the Corvair guys reduce the carrying capacity by 20 pounds so it wouldn't be listed as a one-ton truck.
Ah.
So it's like 1,980 pounds or something like that.
And you said there is something very specific about the very ramp side that we're standing in.
Yeah, so this is obviously not a very pretty truck. It's had a lot of use over the years, but this may be the last one ever produced. We don't know for sure, but it was definitely produced on the last day, and based on the serial number, and we know what the last serial number produced was, it might be the last one because the Rampsides, the Corvans, and the Greenbriers were all produced together on the same assembly line, and based on how many of them were made, this could be the last Rampside. It was originally a solid black truck. It's been repainted, of course.
If you want at least on the early body style, if you wanted a real performance Corvair, and these sell for significantly more than the non-Spyders. You got the Spyders. What makes a Spyder a Spyder?
Sure. So this is a 1964 Corvair Spyder. It started out in '62 as a trim level to the Monza, along with the turbocharged engine. So what really identifies a Spyder as a Spyder is the turbocharged engine, which the first 3 years, 62, 3, 4, was a 150 horse engine. And in '64, they had become such a success that they made it its own model line within the Corvair family.
The horsepower comparison to a non-Spyder, what's the difference?
So in '64, there were 3 engines total, 95 horse, 110 horse, both normally aspirated, and then this 150 horse.
So 150, a whole lot more than 90.
Yeah. It's the turbocharger on a Corvair engine was really designed for, I don't know what you'd call maybe intermediate use. It wasn't a stoplight racer, but from the mid-second gear up. So it's really great for passing and once you're moving.
Mm-hmm. Another thing about the Spyders that it's sort of performance-y, but really doesn't add to the performance, but really distinctive is the dashboard on these. I love the instrument cluster on
Yeah, the brushed aluminum face, and this was the only model in the early model Corvair where you could get a tachometer. So yeah.
When I was 19 years old, I had a Honda 305 motorcycle. My roommate had a Monza Spyder, and sometimes we would trade, and he'd beat the pudding out of my motorcycle and I'd beat the pudding out of his car, so it was a warm memory. But you have something over here that was built to beat the pudding out of. Can we go take a look at that?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
All right. You pointed this out to me as a car that this is a performer. This one goes out and accomplishes something on the road.
Right. Yeah, this is Jonathan Knapp's 66 Corsa, and he has heavily modified it for autocross. Corvairs, as you can imagine, with the smaller engines, aren't really a threat on the drag strip so much, but they sure do great in the autocross. And so Jonathan's done a lot of work over 5 or 6 years. A lot of work on the engine. He has a center mount 4-barrel carburetor, which is really got a lot of performance if you know what to do, and he's done tons of work to the suspension, and it's great. And what's really neat is getting a Corvair back into competition in this area, because Jonathan's just mobbed by people at the track every time he goes to race, because people don't see him anymore.
It goes to the vintage races, that type of thing?
Right, yeah, the autocross clubs, they'll have a lot of open classes, so you can run new cars next to old cars, but a lot of people in their 20s have never seen one of these out on the track.
When I had my 62, either people didn't know what it was, or they had knowledge of it, or they had really misinformation about it. When you're out at various car shows, what's the kind of reaction you're getting from people?
Yeah, it's really changed. I've been into Corvairs since about 1983, and people were still kind of laughing at them then. And now you have much more the people, oh, I remember that, I had my first date in a Corvair, or my parents owned a Corvair. And so it's a lot warmer feeling these days. People are just really excited by them, and we have in our local club here, we've grown a lot in the last 5 years, so they've really kind of come into their own.
The local club is?
Corvairs Northwest.
Corvairs Northwest, up here in the Pacific Northwest. I do love this color. What is it?
It's Marina Blue is what we called it in the Corvair line.
And you pointed out to me off camera that this Marina Blue is all over this car because it was a Canadian built. They painted them a little bit different there.
That's correct, yes.
And the Canadian, what else is different about a Canadian build as opposed to a U.S. build?
Quite a few things, actually. The factory is still there today, although I understand maybe facing closure with the recent round of cutbacks, but it's in Oshawa, which is a suburb of Toronto. And so General Motors has been building cars there for a long time. And they had an arrangement up through 1966 anyway, where they would source quite a few parts in Canada. So a lot of the electrical parts, for example, come from Canadian suppliers. So the coil, instead of the old black steel cased coil we're used to, it's polished aluminum. So that's one of the things that's the most visibly different. But there's a whole list of things we've researched that are different. The seat belts are different, lots of things.
Mm-hmm. Something that isn't different, it's a Corsa. The Monza was the top of the line in the first body style, and then Corsa became the top of the line. They dropped Monza when they changed the body and replaced it with Corsa, correct?
Well, they dropped Spyder.
Spyder.
They kept Monza as kind of the mid-level.
Mm-hmm. And Corsa in the later body style that's the good one to have, right?
Well, it's certainly, that's the only way you could get the turbocharged engine, for example, if you wanted that. And it has the top line trim.
Mm-hmm. So Kent, thank you very much for your hospitality.
My pleasure, Lance. Thanks for coming out.
Great, and what a great collection, what a great garage. I might ask you, who are all these people?
I've not seen many of them before. Maybe they're here for the food, I'm not sure. No, they're all members of our club.
This, and your club would be?
Corvairs Northwest.
Corvairs Northwest. Corvairs Northwest, how did Kent do today? And they haven't even seen the finished product yet.
Yeah.
So. Well, I hope you enjoyed the finished product. We've had a great time here at Kent Sullivan's Corvair collection in his great garage. Hope you had a great time, and until next time, see ya. Bye-bye.
Go Corvairs!